Now, Scarlxrd, the update, let's get it. A rapper I've talked about on multiple occasions in the past, but it's been a while since I've made a video on him. I wanted to talk about Scarlxrd because, well, I wanted to talk about him. Simple as that. So yeah. Let's talk about it. Now, Scarlxrd, it's definitely been a while since I've talked about Scarman. Like most people, I found him through his song Heart Attack, which till this day is still his most successful one. He made a lot of noise in the underground when he first came in the scene. Like I've stated in the past, Scarlxrd is for sure an acquired taste. That aspect of him as an artist might have not necessarily helped him reach a mainstream level because to most people, his music can be a little bit hard to digest and kind of get into. But what it's done is helped him cultivate a fan base that's really bought into and resonate with his type of sound. Scarlxrd is the kind of rapper who has a really rough sound musically speaking. Initially, personally at least, he was for sure a little too much for my ears when I first found him, but the beauty of his music for me has been the madness that can be heard in it. After all, he is a guy who very consistently has brought a very chaotic style to the table. Whether you're a fan of that style, I think the consistency is for sure admirable, and you know, he's pretty much stuck to his guns during this period of him being in the industry. Even though I've always had it in the back of my head that the mainstream wasn't gonna hop on the Scar train like that because of his style, I've always wondered how far is he gonna be able to go height-wise. Scarlxrd very recently dropped a new project titled Doom 2. Like the 2 explains, this is the second edition of the first Doom that came out in 2018. Now I did of course listen to it. There's a couple things I want to bring up, and these are the things that are kind of gonna summarize the current state of Scarlxrd. The first thing I want to bring up is stylistically, Scarlxrd hasn't changed all that much. He's still the same Scarlxrd. His music hasn't changed all that much musically speaking. From what I'm hearing, he's still very much sticking to what people recognize him for. Now granted, he does a very good job at owning what he brings to the table, but there hasn't been much of an evolution going on, so to speak. One thing I noticed that has actually changed though is how he's now using his voice on his records, and this is a little bit subtle, so you gotta pay attention. From what I'm hearing specifically on this new project of his voice blends in a little more than usual with the production. It's almost like his vocals serve as some kind of instrumental. Again, it is a little bit subtle, but that's personally been my biggest takeaway from his style at the moment. Even though Scar has been a fairly experimental artist, I think right now he's more experimental than ever. He's stretching out his vocals on his songs way more than I thought he could. He sounds way more comfortable on his records from what I'm hearing, and even though this new project is way better than the stuff he's dropped in the past, this is the least amount of buzz Scar has had ever since he got in the game. I believe that there's one key reason for this, and that has to do with the whole evolution conversation I touched on. Musically speaking, he's still making the same kind of music. He hasn't really stretched himself out stylistically, and I'm suspecting that's the reason why Scar's fanbase hasn't grown all that much. Currently, he's not in a stage of multiplying, but really he's maintaining what he already has. Keep in mind, Scarlxrd, like I've said in the past, is an acquired taste, so initially he might be a little bit hard to get into, but on the other hand, one of the biggest benefits of it, the fans you do end up attracting as an artist who do end up loving what you have to offer, most likely they're gonna stay fans for life. So instead of being for everybody, you're now for a specific niche audience. In this case, that's Scarlxrd fanbase in a nutshell. He's always been the kind of artist to me that's very hard to be on a fence about. You either like the nigga or you don't. Another thing I want to bring up, and this is something that needs to be talked about regarding Scarlxrd, he's had a lot of label issues in the last 2 years, if you didn't know. A couple months ago, back in December 2020, he put up this Instagram story right here, and this is what he said: "I work hard, but Universal works harder. Glad I left, to be honest. Take it all. You can't touch the old, and the new coming is better than everything I ever did. Feels good to be independent again. Most backwards 2 years of my life." Yes, you heard that right. Scarlxrd is now an independent rapper. Scarlxrd was signed to Island Records, who's owned by Universal Music Group. From what I've gathered, Scar was unsigned up until his Doom project, which came out in 2018. That previous year, so in 2017, that's when he dropped Lord Season. That's the project his 6 Feet record was on. But as you could clearly see from that Instagram story I showed you, he was talking about how he left his label. Even though he mentioned Universal, I'm not sure if the issue he had was only with them because he was signed to Island Records, but as I stated, Island Records are of course under UMG. Something I want to bring up regarding this is the fact that Scarlxrd's output for the last 2 years has been absolutely insane. After Doom, leading into 2019 in March, he dropped Infinity. He followed that up with Immortalization. After that, he dropped Acquired Taste Volume 1, followed that up with Scar Hours, and then after that dropped Fantasy Void, and then last but not least, Doom 2 came out this year. That dropped around a month ago. The point I'm trying to make is Scarlxrd might have actually been dropping so much because he wanted to get out of his contract with his label. If you don't know how that works, it's very simple. When you sign a contract, depending on what kind of contract it is, of course, but most times somewhere in the fine print, the label and the artist agrees on how many projects the artist is gonna drop under the record label. So if you guys agree on 4 albums, you're gonna have to drop those 4 albums before getting out of the contract is even up for discussion. Between 2019 and 2021, Scarlxrd dropped 5 projects, excluding Doom 2, which is his first independent release since Lord Season. Keep in mind, most of the projects he's dropped during these 2 years almost felt a little bit random, as in no actual strategy release behind them. The rollout for most of them seemed almost a little bit sloppy, a little bit careless, which is strange because Scar is a guy who's super dedicated to his craft, so for him to release back-to-back projects without any kind of thought behind them, what's really going on here? I think the whole him trying to get out of his contract theory makes a lot of sense. We know for sure that he hasn't been on the same page as his label. That's number one. I even remember how he dropped a BLM record during the summer of 2020 when the protests and all that were happening. The song was literally titled, "The label is definitely gonna delete this one," and that's exactly what unfortunately happened. Apart from the label stuff, 18 days before his most recent release, the project leaked. He put up a quite entertaining, actually, lengthy post discussing it and letting his fans know what was going on. Apparently someone out there, someone out there got access to the project early and decided to go around selling it to Scarlxrd fans for a little bit of cash. In the post, Scar stated that he was suspecting that that person might have been working at or knew someone at the digital distribution platform he was using his music for. Long story short, he of course dropped the project, but it did significantly affect him because the entire project was out there somewhere on the internet and there wasn't much he could do about it. So on top of the rough time he's had with the label, this now happened when he was finally independent, ready to move on with his career, which obviously that's sad. These artists work their faces off day in, day out just to have this kind of bullshit happen to them. Definitely not fair, but you know, it is what it is. I don't know what the next step for Scarlxrd is though. I'm thinking out loud right now, but what can he do to take his career to the next level? Because it is a fact that Scarlxrd has been stalling a little bit for these last 2 years. He shouldn't be at the position he's in right now if you ask me. I think he should be way further ahead, but my opinion is obviously not reality, so let's look at what we have in front of us as we speak. Scar is obviously very talented, that's number one. I also think he's good for a lifetime with the kind of fan base he's been able to cultivate and build. He does have a very dope, consistent, and cool discography that's brought him to this point. He's a rapper who I think is not for everybody, so he doesn't belong to the streets. He's a very niche rapper with a very distinct sound who can easily go the distance with what he has going for him at the moment. Despite anything that's happened in the past, this is a clean slate for him. It's an opportunity and a chance for him to plot on ways he could take his movement to the next level. As far as what that might look like, I think for Scarlxrd, the way he's gonna get the biggest bang for his buck is by locking in on what kind of vision he actually has for his music. I think part of that vision must have gotten lost in the pursuit of him dropping back-to-back projects to perhaps get out of his contract. By the way, just to clarify, that part is not confirmed. That's simply what I'm suspecting. Continuing, there may be an opportunity for Scarlxrd in the future to rebrand himself, or if not rebrand, maybe start pushing the boundaries of your music, because what do you have to lose? You already have a very solid foundation, a great fan base, a lane that you've been dominating for a couple years now. Why not expand your style a little bit, dip your foot in the water, so to speak, and see what happens? There's no limitations on you at the moment. The shackles have been taken off, right? The label, and now you're completely independent, completely self-sufficient. You can afford to step out of your comfort zone and do what you do best, which is make some great ass music. The Scarlxrd update. There you have it. But yeah, Scarlxrd, it's definitely been a while since I've talked about Scarlxrd. I've noticed that there's not a lot of people bringing him up in any kind of conversations at the moment, and that's why I wanted to make this video. And on top of that, I've really been bumping a lot of his music recently, so why not? I think Scar is a very unique artist in the industry, and I think his presence is very refreshing. He's an artist who has a lot to offer, and I want to see him elevate like crazy. I think he can do it. What do you think though? Definitely let me know in the comment section below, and let's have a discussion about this.